I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review another electronic artist. I feel like there's been a lot of quality electronic albums that have come out this year. A number of our electronic artists have released albums, one of which is an artist from the UK called Gold Panda. The second album, which we're going to review for you guys today, is called Half of Where You Live. As I said, electronic. This is more, we reviewed John Hopkins a couple reviews ago, and I thought that was much more of a almost kind of an austere post-rock vibe to it.
Yeah.
This is much more dance house based.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me, Tom?
Yeah, I agree with that. Whereas John Hopkins was, a little bit thicker in the beats, a little bit even closer to dubstep at times, more than just the sound. This is closer to artists like Caribou or Fortet, where things get a little more drawn out and a little more eclectic with the arrangements, rather than trying to be super sharp or moody. It's more just kind of about some fun,
right?
I would say.
Right, I totally agree. Now, one thing I really liked about this album, just from the get-go, is the beats. I felt like Gold Panda just did a great job constructing these beats. It almost like one of the things I've always loved about the Postal Service's only album, Give Up, was just the beats. They were hectic, they were fun. It made it interesting to listen to, almost like an Aphex Twin kind of beat. And now you're also seeing that on Gold Panda, and I feel like they did a good job on some tracks here of providing very interesting beats. Now, the other thing that they're really kind of doing in their sound that I haven't heard a lot of other artists doing lately, two things. One you brought up right before we turned the camera on, is the kind of Oriental vibe you get in just the sounds that they're using, that they're choosing, the samples that they use. And then the other is that these guys really like to take one vocal sample and just repeat it. And some of these tracks, like track 3, Brazil, and track 5, Community, take one single vocal track and then just repeat it. Like Brazil repeats the line, Brazil, Brazil, over and over again. I'm like, Jesus! That is just too much Brazil. Now, so other than that, those two songs were kind of, to me, those were kind of the points that, like, the blemishes on the front half of this album. But overall, I felt like if there was anything I was going to comment on in this album, it's that the first, like, tracks 1 through 6 are just so much more aggressive than the back 4 tracks, 5 tracks on this album, which are much more laid back. They're also less ambitious than the front half. They're less dynamically intense. They don't seem to shoot to accomplish as much as the first tracks. So Tom, what was your overall experience with Half of Where You Lived?
Yeah, I did like it. I like the kind of eclectic sound, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of the samples and sounds that are being used are just very sonically pleasing. Especially when you listen to, like, the first track, Junk City 2, and it's a longer track, like 6.5 minutes about, but I think it's a great opening to the album. Gets you in the right mood and mindset for it. So overall, I did have a positive experience with this. I'll go ahead and get my 2 big gripes out of the way.
Please do.
And they're actually things that you've kind of touched on and mentioned already, but I'd like to just get into a little bit more detail on them. Number 1, being those repeated vocal samples. I know that that's something that's really popular with certain artists in this genre, and depending on how it's used, it can be good, but in this case, it really just kind of bothered me.
It's all about how you use them.
Exactly, and it was used on the tracks where it was used. You mentioned Brazil and Community. It also shows up in an English house, but it doesn't really bother me as much in that track.
It's all about how you use it.
Yeah, exactly. So those 2 tracks right next to each other actually kind of work as a good contrast point with each other. But I think that it happens so much, and it's so out of place and jarring and sharp when it comes in, that it actually distracts me from the other good musical ideas that are going on behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, in an English house, you had the hectic beat that's going on, which my favorite is what sold me on the track. But in Brazil, and especially in Community, not only do you have the vocal tracks repeating, but you have the other samples repeating as well. The other, like, synth melodies are repeating throughout the entire time. You also have a more steady beat in those. You don't have the hectic kind of expansive beat structure. So it's just this constant, everything's just like just an army walking in formation. It just gets a little bit old and repetitive after a while. It's the same effect I have of the AB song structure that we talk about all the time, when it just beats it into you so much. So what was your other gripe?
The other thing is that back half. Now, and actually, it's
Tom,
tough because
you really don't like, you're more of a front half sort of guy.
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that sexual?
No!
I don't know.
No!
I'm not going to think about it anymore. Okay, stop saying that, damn it. We'll get to Jesus in good time. But the back half of the album, I actually thought it was a little bit more consistent in quality. It didn't have any tracks that I really didn't like the front half did, but it also just didn't really have much in the way of highlights for me. Now, Jake, you picked track 10, The Most Livable City, as a track pick. If I were to pick a fourth track pick on this album, that would probably be it. But the other songs in those last like 5 tracks, I found to be all right to listen to, but just a little bit underwhelming. So really the whole last half of this album, as a solid listening experience, I just kind of was like, meh, and I just kind of zoned out, and it was all right, but so I ended up coming out of this album just thinking, okay, that's it, I'm done now, and nothing really offended me, nothing really pissed me off. I enjoyed it all right overall, but I just, I never felt myself wanting to come back for more on this one.
Right, and I think that's really fair, and I think that when it comes down to it, it's the disparity in the track quality that really sets this, it's what makes this album not succeed on every level. In fact, I think that you can make the argument that this album has some room for improvement. The other thing is that it just could have been more ambitious. So I actually agree with both of your gripes. It's just I think that they affected me a little bit less than you. Overall, I enjoyed this album when it was on. It was something that I had a good time. Now, given between John Hopkins, and the reason why we keep comparing it is because we listen to these albums at the same time. Between John Hopkins and Gold Panda, I'm going to pick John Hopkins 10 out of 10 times, which is why I gave that the score I did, and I'm going to give this a 71.
I'm going to go 66.
So upper 60s for us, which means that has a lot of good qualities, but there's a little some things here and there that Gold Panda could have done to make this album a better listening experience. Still, probably shouldn't go overlooked if you guys are into electronic music, especially electronic music that, it flirts with dance and house. Definitely something that you want to check out, and leave us a comment at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic, which you're probably there right now. And if you are, why don't you head over to our Facebook or Twitter page, because that's where we get a lot of talking with you guys. A lot of the conversations we have about music are on social media, and it's so very important to us to have your involvement. You guys have been awesome this year, giving us 2013 albums you've been into and want to hear us or see us review on camera. So please continue to do that and give us your support, because you guys are what makes this train keep on a chugging. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIM TV, moving music critique forward.